Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column Live. It's the 15th of February 2014 and we're on time today. It's 1 o'clock and it's a bit of a wet and windy day, Brian.
It is.
I haven't said who's here, but...
well, that's true.
I know. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Gerrish and Mike Robinson are here in Plymouth.
And we have a guest waiting.
And we have a guest waiting, yes. Roger Hayes is waiting to talk about evictions.
Well, he's going to be talking about all the good work he and the team have been doing in the courts. So we can now do the weather and then we'll start with the programme. So it's pretty gloomy in Plymouth. Forecast for yesterday was absolutely spot on. So we started the day with frost and -1 and ended it with, it was pitch dark and pouring with rain. Yeah. Not much better today. And we understand from Roger in Liverpool that it's raining up there. So pretty standard across the country. But apparently Australia is experiencing some very high temperatures.
I think a plastic bottle melted on the court at the Australian Open tennis the other day.
Yeah, it should have been a tinny then, shouldn't it? Okay, so what have we got?
I believe.
npower. Well, this was an interesting headline because, of course, a lot of people are watching their energy prices climb as more and more foreign companies take over power in UK, and we waste the nation's resources on wind power. But npower getting an absolute hammering here as the top company for complaints, German owned, of course. So they've had all sorts of problems supplying bills on time and dealing with queries. And actually, we've been contacted by a number of people over the last few days talking about power companies simply smashing their way into their homes in order to fit pay-as-you-go meters. So there's a lot of questions to be asked about that. But as usual, we thought we'd just sort of delve into them. Here they are, boasting of their customer service. But when we got really into npower, we got quite interested because they've got a sort of corporate responsibility system. And they've been running a special committee for this to make sure that everything they do is responsible, and we were very interested to find Dame Julia Cleverden sitting in the middle of this. In fact, we spoke to her office about an hour ago, but we haven't had a reply. We're going to send her an email. But here she is. So she's very, very big on responsible business leadership. So we're interested to know what she's got to say about the fact that she's been promoting German npower, which has got the worst record of all the energy supply companies.
What interests me on that article is that it's stating that the npower is actually causing hardship as it has imposed the highest price rises, and it's also been providing inaccurate bills. So we did email. We spoke to somebody and they didn't really want to speak to us and asked us to email her office. And so we have asked dear Dame Julia her thoughts and comments about the causing hardship on the people of Britain and providing inaccurate accounts. But as Brian said, we have yet to hear from them. Yes, Mike?
Yeah, well, of course, the causing hardship bit, if they break into your house and replace a pay later meter with a pay-as-you-go meter, of course, those are 4 or 5 times as expensive as, per unit energy as the sort of direct debit option. So they're absolutely penalising the people that are least capable of paying. And it seems like this is just the attitude of most of these major corporations now.
Yeah, definitely agreed.
Okay, well, maybe that's an appropriate time just to say, Roger Hayes, we should have you on the line at the moment. And if you're there and you've just heard that first item of news, you've been doing a lot of work both with the British Constitution Group and yourself in the courts. Have you got any short comments to make just on that item of the power firms and meters?
Well, it's nothing new there, of course, is we're getting ripped off left, right and centre by whoever feels that they want to rip us off. We're not being defended by our courts, we're not being defended by the police, we're not being defended by the politicians. It's just open game, isn't it? If you're a citizen of the United Kingdom, corporation can just come in and steal from you and there is no protection. What more can I say?
Well, you've summed it up perfectly there, Roger, as I thought you would. In fact, we've got a bit of a theme to today's news, and that is that that if you look at across the papers, if you listen to what's appearing on the mainstream media, we're just being bombarded with 1,000 different things. There's a very confusing picture for the average person as to what's real news, what's false news. But we have, so we've reflected some of that in what we're going to talk about today. But we've also picked up on the fact that we can see local councils becoming increasingly draconian as they implement, for example, bedroom tax, or they're now saying that people have got to be fined for spitting in the street. So there's a number of different things going on. So we're going to show a spread of that type of thing, try and lead people through the maze, and then of course you're going to be telling us what you've been up to in the courts. So I think it'll fit together quite nicely. But this is where society is clearly heading. We've been speaking a lot about China. We couldn't resist bringing this one in. Chinese firm hunting for the maths gene so that one day parents can pick their smartest embryos. Is that a lovely picture or what?
Shocking.
And I would guess that if this is being reported now, they've actually been experimenting with this in the labs. And just so that you can see the reality of this is a bell curve where they're sort of plotting out people's IQs and then what sort of jobs they'd be suitable for. So if you're in the middle of the bracket, you might be suitable to be a clerk or a teller or a police officer or a machinist or in sales. But if you're the top end, you're going to be in law because you're going to be very intelligent, or you're going to be a chemist or an executive. So this is, I was going to say scary, I'm not going to use that word. This is pretty horrific stuff where people are now lining themselves up on a level with God to select children. And if you don't quite meet the criteria, presumably you're going to be aborted.
That's shocking.
Nice friends Mr. Cameron's got over there. And of course, who are the Chinese talking to? They're talking to Google, who's particularly interested in seeing how they can link this in with, of course, the massive surveillance on all of our viewing, reading and surfing habits. And children, of course, are in the forefront, and as we pointed out, they are very vulnerable to what's going on.
Yeah, recently on the UK column, we showed about an app that was designed for children called Smash Dude, which was a little man being tortured. Well, it's just getting a little bit worse now. There's now an app being designed for our smartphones, designed for children, and it's Plastic Surgery and Plastic Doctor, it's called. It's developed by Karina Rodriguez Games, and it's aimed for young girls. And I'm just inquiring, what message is this sending out? I mean, here you can see the picture of it where pieces of a Barbie-type character are being cut away to make the ideal face and the ideal person. And I know Brian ended up having a look at this story and looked at a Twitter campaign that has been headed by this group, Everyday Sexism Project, and they've called for this campaign to make this game for 9-year-olds and over. I mean, personally, I think it should be banned altogether.
Yeah.
You know, what the message it's sending out to the young girls is just shocking. But you couldn't find anything about this everyday sexism.
Well, I think it's a very interesting website. Of course, you see all the international flags run along the top. When we did a bit of simple work, who are these people? How has a funny little website suddenly sparked a major article in the national press? I mean, they never come to us, and maybe we've been around a little bit longer than everyday sexism. But I've got an uneasy feeling about this. I think the concern over the app is correct, unsuitable for children, pretty horrific. But I've got a feeling that this is being ramped up. So here we've now got another campaign for sexism or against sexism.
Well, they're specifically calling it for 9-year-olds and above. But I mean, at 9-year-olds, that's when they're starting to look at themselves in the mirror, like between the 9 to 13-year-old, you know, as they're coming towards their teenage. That's the time. So really, it should be banned altogether, or maybe made for 15s and over. I mean, really, it shouldn't be available, but
it's sick.
It is sick, absolutely.
And some concerns about toxic chemicals, basically, as well.
If anyone's ever heard of MI, please let me know. I only just found out about it. It's methylisothiazione. I think I'm pronouncing that right. As I say, I've never heard of it, but it's a powerful biocide and preservative. It's designed to extend shelf life of products such as as baby wipes and other cosmetic cleansers, etc. And a study has been carried out by Dr. Mary Wu Chang at the University of Connecticut, and she found that a rise in dangerous allergic reactions is due to this chemical, which has previously been diagnosed. These allergies have previously been diagnosed as eczema, dermatitis, and psoriasis. And I don't know if you've got a picture of what this baby wipe did. You haven't.
I haven't.
But the photograph with this article is showing a child's mouth severely legioned and swollen, and this Dr. Mary Wu Chang has said that it's causing because of this chemical that has been put in baby wipes.
And of course, around the house, we've now also got the biocidal washing up liquid and soaps and everything else, which a lot of people are saying mean that people, and particularly children, don't build up their immune system.
Right.
So all of this is being bombarded against us. We are getting somewhere pretty serious, so stay with us on this, but more toxic chemicals we're talking about.
Yeah, University of Exeter this time has been testing 82 items of clothing from 25 different countries for research, for a research project for Greenpeace. Toxic chemicals have been found in items from leading brands such as Disney, Burberry, Gap and Primark, to name just a few. And I had a look at a few of these chemicals, and Brian's got the list up there. There is a chemical called MPEs, phthalates, I think it's called, and where else? Yeah, and NPEs antimony, and they're shocking as some of the things that can come out. It can disrupt hormones and include dermatitis as well, and exposure of various organisms to rats have brought out problems with their nervous systems as well, and these are now being put into clothing.
So we've got a double issue going on here. We've got the use of these highly toxic chemicals, and then once they've been used, we can scare the public silly with all of the reports about the immense dangers.
We've also got to look at what it's doing to the people who are making these clothes, being even more exposed to these chemicals all the time. So I wonder what it's doing to the people.
They're only third world countries. I'm sure the Conservatives or Labour won't be worried about them. Mike?
Yeah, they're only children in third world countries, but I was just going to make the point that Clive has been talking about this over several of the Health Revolution programmes, so anybody that isn't watching that programme, I do encourage it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the Mirror here had a very appropriate headline: "Gloating Tories don't care that people are dying of poverty on the real life benefit street." So we've got this massive what's the word? Dichotomy at the moment, because we've got benefit cheats being pushed, which we're going to come through to. But this headline, I think this is our comment, this headline is true. So we've got gloating Tories like Cameron and Osborne. They're all in the millionaire bracket. They don't actually care. They don't care because their job is to actually destroy society at the moment. But looking at this headline, the question is, what does this actually mean for families and society? Well, it means don't look to the present government to actually lead us into prosperity, jobs and happiness, because we've got some very, very dangerous people. And of course, they're not all white, swanky men, as Julia Middleton from Common Purpose would love to say, because we've got people like this, obviously an ego the size of her swimming suit, and basically she has been claiming these ridiculous sums of money. What she says that one of her researchers, I think it was, had to go to the local swimming pool for this was to do with saving the nation, and it cost her 90 pence, so she's had to claim this back. But the point is that we've got a mixture of men like Osborne. What's his background? Well, a few glasses of wine with interesting women in fairly down-market nightclubs, or we've got this lady whose ego takes us to the swimming pool. They're dangerous, and somehow they've got to be gently removed from Parliament. Now, we're sticking with the Mirror here because this one was also true, but it's not true. So the article was actually talking about the situation in France, where the president has been popping down the road on his motor scooter for a little bit of, I'm not sure what the French word is, but how's your father is the traditional English expression. We're not going to talk about that because it's not worth talking about. but it's our affair too when politicians cheat and lie. So we're going to agree with Alison Phillips here, but then we say, why does the Mirror not investigate our lying, cheating politicians? And I think we've got to make the conclusion that this is because they are part of the political system. I'm going to say, Roger, would you like to just comment on the little selection you've seen? I think you might say something to us. Well, of course, this is to distract us from what's really going on in the country.
Well, I'm amused, really. I mean, Holland is very good at plugging dams. Holland, as in the French Holland, is very good at plugging dames. Nothing new there, once again. All right, it's just, as you say, that there's a whole series of issues that they raise in the newspaper which are a distraction. The most important issues that we should be talking about never see the light of day. And I'm very pleased that at least the UK column is covering some of these issues, and particularly what's going on in the courts, what the police are doing, which we'll run through very shortly.
Okay, well, that comment leads us in very nicely to the serious side of life. Mike's just going to pop overseas to Afghanistan here, because we have been saying for a very long time now that Afghanistan, the war and everything about it, is one of the biggest lies that the British government has ever told. What have you got for us here, Mike?
Well, this is a new propaganda document from the British government. UK's work in Afghanistan, as you can see from the contents, it's talking about humanitarian aid, it's talking about development of infrastructure, it's talking about a host of things. And I didn't press the button, so people didn't hear that bit, but anyway. So talking about all kinds of things. It's got lots of nice, pretty photographs like this overview of the UK and Afghanistan. It's really a major propaganda piece. Talking about NATO, obviously, and partnerships, and talking about the success after the 9/11 attacks, removing Al-Qaeda, hunting Osama bin Laden, establishing ISAF, which is the international security forces over there, and Helmand's growing economy. Well, growing Helmand's economy. Well, of course, that's a very interesting headline, because that's exactly what they've been doing, growing Helmand's economy in the sense of opium crops. The only thing that this document, which is quite a number of pages long, has to say is one little paragraph about opium. It says, opium production still remains a very serious problem in the region. The UK has played a role in trying to tackle the drugs trade, including helping Afghan authorities to eradicate poppy fields. So keep that in mind. They are claiming that they are helping Afghan authorities to eradicate poppy fields. They then go on to say, we have also helped farmers to grow alternative legal crops, but the results have been varied, with the worst results to date reported in 2013. Tackling the narcotics trade will be a long uphill battle. Well, indeed. So let's just remind ourselves, 2013 numbers, 24% less eradication. So Britain claims in that little paragraph that it's helping the Afghanis eradicate more crops than ever. In fact, last year, 24% less eradication, leaving 18,157 acres of poppy growth. 2 more provinces in Afghanistan, according to last year's figures, affected by poppy cultivation. The net poppy cultivation, therefore, up to 516,000 acres altogether. That's a 36% rise last year over 2012. That potential production of opium on a good year, and last year was a very good year, of 6,500 tons of opium. And, well, let's remind ourselves about what happened in 2002 when we invaded, 2001, 2002 when we invaded Afghanistan. The work that the Taliban had done to get rid of opium production in Afghanistan was completely undone, and there's been a steady rise in cultivation ever since. So complete and utter lies from the Cabinet Office, the UK Aid and the Foreign Office in this document. I recommend people download it and read it just for a laugh, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a serious laugh. So we've got a full spectrum, haven't we? Because
Totally.
we've got complete lies on the domestic front about the state of the economy or the number of jobs or the state of the NHS, state of the armed forces. and then we take it overseas. Same pattern of lies. What are we lying about? We're lying about massive supply of narcotics, both into UK, Europe, and the world.
Just very quickly, just on a financial side, just to Mike, I see he hasn't got it in the list of the stories, but just quickly, your thoughts on RBS paying their bankers, giving the bonuses more than the actual year's salary. It's come out today.
Right, well, just before I comment on that, just to make a final point about Afghanistan, when we last covered those figures, we mentioned the fact that British farmers are now growing opium in Britain in order to supply the National Health Service with morphine and other opiate drugs. Now, if the British government was really interested in that opium production being in Afghanistan for legal reasons, then there is a market for that. But unfortunately, the British government it continues to discourage the legal market in opiates and encourage the illicit market in opiate derived drugs, because of course it's the opiate derived drugs which are fueling the financial system and keeping it afloat at the moment. So, and we've seen in the last 12 months a number of banks, HSBC and others, being prosecuted in various countries for drug-related money laundering. But to answer your point, what do I think? Do I think that a publicly owned bank should be paying bonuses to staff whenever it's still effectively insolvent and still owes people quite a lot of money for various banking scandals like PPI and interest rate swap mis-selling? No.
It's only just because they said it's actually the bonuses are actually higher than their annual salary that are being paid out to RBS staff.
Well, yes, but you've got to remember that if they don't pay this money, these people are going to go to banks in other countries. So they've got to keep the best staff here. That's
the best staff. They've got to keep the best staff with the highest IQs, and luckily the Chinese are going to breed all the future bankers because they're very, very clever people indeed.
Yeah, because they've been choosing their babies.
Right, absolutely. Roger, we've got a few more home issues coming up here, which I think will prompt a bit of comment from you. What we're looking at is a slow but steady clampdown on freedoms and proper civil liberty in this country. So we've picked a number of things, and we'll finish after the subject of bin men, and then we'll bring you in properly. So, but keep your eye on these because I think you'll be interested. This is the Express, and well, the story is that the leader of Harrow Council has been having a rant, and the rant is about the fact that in Harrow they're having problems with people who are living on the dole. And they've also got problems with Romanians. The Romanians have been rooting through neighbours' bins looking for metal. The council's had enough. They've refused to clear up the mess. But people really who are taking benefits should get off the sofa and get a job. So it's pretty hard language. So what's actually going on here? Well, I think there's a lot going on in this article because I think this is classic propaganda to increase tension and divide and rule. So we're going to make this comment on it. You've got a number of messages. Well, the key message coming through is that welfare claimants are scroungers and drunks. Implication, of course, is that jobs are easily available because this councillor, I'd like to know how much she's being paid, is clearly assuming that these people can go off and find jobs without any problem at all. We've then got the council making a moral judgment effectively. In this case, although they're paid to get out there and clean up the streets, they're refusing to clean up the mess. And of course, the real cause of the problem, excuse me, the politicians and their policies which have created the unemployment and the welfare dependence and the migration through open doors are not mentioned. So we get the sense, the feeling that a lot of people are going to be reading this across the country and they're going to be pretty angry at what's going on.
I was born in Harrow. Grew up there till I was about 10 or 11.
Big problems.
Big changes.
Keep your eye on this lady. Obviously a big player, but here's Harrow Council, and this is her personal blog here. If you read through this, she's saying what we're going to do in January 2014. There's quite a lot of it. We just highlight a bit. She said, Anti-Fraud Week is going to be promoted with posters carrying the image of a hand dipping into another person's back pocket, symbolising the fact that cheating the council is effectively stealing from your neighbour. Now, there's some pretty devious analogies there. Defrauding the council is not some slightly naughty, victimless crime against a faceless corporation that can afford it. By cheating us, you're undermining the council's ability to serve the people who live in your street. So there's a language here. There's a bit more down the bottom here. They've been working with the police, and she really wants to do something about people who are spitting on the pavement. Now, I'm not too sure what she's talking about here, because the amount of rain we get, if somebody was to spit on the pavement, I think it would disappear pretty quickly. Is she talking about chewing gum? I don't know.
Well, if she's talking about chewing gum, maybe we should send Sam down to Harrow, because if they've got one of these little wardens that stand outside stations imposing fines on people who drop a cigarette, and if they're going to be doing something similar, I'm sure I was talking. Sam's out and about, going to get these people who are standing outside the stations where you can't put cigarettes out, but they're obviously going to have people out now about spitting, so it'd be good to get
operating unlawfully, relying on the people to convict themselves. Exactly. So pretty aggressive language from this lady. Then we've got this one. A couple took their children out of school for a week's holiday in Rhodes, and because they're not paying the fines that the local council, the local education authority is throwing at them, they're going to have to appear in court, and they could be imprisoned. Now, the Mail has kindly brought up the bit of the Education Act that they've fallen foul of, Section 444. But the key point is here that if you read through, and if this report is correct, this is all saying for repeated abuse, failure to have your children at school, whereas it appears from the report that they've simply... they booked a holiday before rules were changed because they've stuck to their gun. But now it's not up to you whether your children are in school or not. It's up to the state. And if you're not going to do what the state says, the state is going to put you in prison.
It's just unbelievable.
Unbelievable, but true. And then we've got a slightly different one here. This is from the Scottish Express. I picked on it because it's wind farms, and Mike's very keen on wind energy, of course. But we've got a poison pen letters been sent to people who've been campaigning against a wind farm. And I think, again, if you read through the article, there's all sorts of little messages under the surface. One of the key ones, if you protest, watch out, something nasty could happen to you. And of course, there's no reports at all in the article about why people are challenging wind power itself. So you focus on all the nasty part of the poison pen letter, but there's no real research into what's happening underneath. We'll just pop on to this one. Here's the bin men. And we're talking about Scotland, but essentially this particular council, Perth and Kinross Council, has sent out specialist bin advisors, and they've been rummaging through people's bins to see what they've been doing. Now notice the language. Residents were outraged. So here we've got the anger theme. And then if we pop over here, we've got the local spokeswoman from the council insisting that nobody would be subject to sanctions. I'm sure Roger will pick up on that word. So here's a council talking about sanctions. And then here's the guinea pig aspect, that here's the council spying on us, studying what we're doing to see how they can manage their future nudge campaign. And we're going to say, we think the real message is the council is in charge. We're watching you, assessing you. And if you don't behave, we have the power to fine you or enter your home or bankrupt you. So, Roger, what do you make of that lot?
Right, OK. There's a couple of interesting points I would raise. The first one would be the council has the power to fine you. No, they don't. Only a court has the authority, and it's not the power, it's the authority to fine you. What we had going back some time ago when somebody charged using the Bill of Rights of 1689, that the Bill of Rights said that no fines or forfeiture without judgment of your peers. In other words, you can't be fined. Now, at that point, they realised, oh, we've slipped up here. So Judge Collins, if you remember, converted the concept to it wasn't a fine, it was a penalty charge notice, and therefore sidestepped our Constitution and the rule of law by creating judge-made, if you like, a judge-made concept, which is not a fine. Now, the council have sort of moved on and forgotten about that ruling, and they're now saying we have the power to fine you. Now, if we go to court, we defend ourselves using the Constitution and the rule of law, the judiciary, of course, will ignore it because they've grown arrogant, they've grown very, very dictatorial, and they will simply say it doesn't matter. Trust me, I know, because I have been in a court and we have claimed as our hierarchy, our claim, our Constitution as the hierarchy of our claim, and the judge has said to us, she does not have to take any notice of the Constitution in her court. She only had to take on board statutes. So that's where we're at. The Constitution, the rule of law, the highest law in the land, is of no consequence to these judges. And the councils have no consideration of the fact that they cannot fine us because they have the power to do so. That language, the power, the government now claims it's in power, and the government now claims it can give the police power. And here you have the council also claiming it has power. Now, the other point I pick up on, which is a very interesting thing, is the constant attack on people who aren't employed. What they're trying to do is they're trying to denigrate people who don't have jobs, whether it's their fault or not. And the point being that if people with jobs can see people without jobs as lowlives, as scroungers, and so on and so forth. So the media will, from time to time, pick up an example. This one recent, in fact, it's in the paper today. It was published yesterday. A father with so many children, father of 22, who doesn't actually have a job. He's earning X number of hundreds of thousands of pounds a year on benefits, and of course he's a scrounger. Well, I think bringing up 22 children who will eventually earn a wage and pay taxes is actually a frightfully hard job. I don't envy the individual. I'm not condoning people being on benefits. What I'm suggesting is you can't bring up children and work, so somebody's got to do it. I don't know what the situation with the mother is, but what I'm emphasizing here is simply that bringing up children is a job, and if you are bringing up 22 children, well, what do you do in your spare time? I don't know. The other thing is this business about these executives, these people criticizing people without jobs. The disability boss mentioned also in the paper today on £850,000 a year. Good work if you can get it, eh?
Yeah.
Right, well, one of the things I'll just come back on, you're talking about what councils are doing. We reported some time ago on the head of legal services at Staffordshire County Council, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Tradewell, and he had published comment, a short report, but nevertheless published in the public domain, in which he was writing glowing words about Local Government Act, and saying that effectively this now gave councils the power to do anything. Those were his words, the power to do anything. And of course, we put that against the ability of councils like Staffordshire to simply walk in and take people's children. How do you see the picture at the moment? We are supposed to be in a sovereign nation state. We're supposed to be protected by common law. How do you see the situation in UK at the moment? What should people be concerned about?
Well, we are not protected by common law. We used to be, but the common law is being ignored. We are now being controlled, and it's a very important word, we are controlled by statutes. The judiciary now tell us that statutes, which are man-made, acts of parliament, etc., are superior to common law. Which is a lie. It's an outrageous lie, because what they're trying to do, they're sliding their authority behind statutes, imposing statutes upon us, and then governments are claiming they have power. And when you actually try and talk about the rule of law in the courts, they then turn around and say, we're only interested in statutes. We are all governed by statutes, and everything else is completely irrelevant. So that's where we're at today. We are basically now living in a police state. It's not a case of it's going to become a police state. We are now actually and factually living in a police state. And the case that I dealt with yesterday was a pure example of that, where we had a conversation with the police who attended, and the police, who we pointed out had an obligation to uphold the law and to defend the people and to uphold the Constitution, they completely didn't know what was going on. And that's the problem that we've got. Ignorance reigns supreme.
Well, Roger, a lot of people have been saying to us over recent weeks that they've been getting concerned, very concerned about what's happening in the country. We used to feel that people weren't waking up quick enough. They're now waking up, but the ones who are now awake are saying, what on earth can we do about this? So can you take us through some of the good work that you've been doing with a lot of other people to expose what is being done really to undermine our constitution and subvert the courts? How do we get on board this?
Okay, well, the important thing is it's all very well making these claims that, they're not doing this or they are doing that. You've got to be able to prove the point. So over the last 12 months, we've been very, very busy in the court. We've been busy with Guy Taylor, the work we've been doing with Guy Taylor and other members, and culminating in the work yesterday where I attended at an eviction, one of our members, eviction from his home, totally unlawfully. And what we have done is we've done this by the book. We've followed the rule of law. We've done our paperwork. We've actually written. We've tried to negotiate. And this is the interesting point. The gentleman involved, Neil Warren, a courageous man who's decided to put his foot down and say no to the illegality of everything. And he has actually made an offer to the people who claim they've lent him money, full settlement of his mortgage, effectively cash, if they could provide the proof that they had lent him money. In other words, if they could provide the proof that they had a mortgage deed, a lawful mortgage deed signed by two parties, and if they could provide provenance of the money they claimed to have lent him. And we attended court on that very simple premise. We asked the judge to rule that this company proved their case. But what's happening now is there is no requirement to provide evidence when you deal with money. The only thing you need in a court now is assumption. But the court is based on assumption. An assumption that somebody has lent you money, an assumption that the money existed in the first place. If you challenge that assumption, the judge simply says, I am satisfied that this assumption is correct. And we say, on what law are you basing that your ability to actually find against the defendant in this matter when there is no evidence? And of course, the point is there is no law, there is no provision whatsoever. And we've gone as far as to, if you like, put the thing in very simple terms. We've written to these businesses, the bankers. My sister is another one. I've been writing to the banks on behalf of my sister. And the question I ask the banks is this. Are you claiming that you have lent money, or is it a case of you have actually facilitated credit? Now, they've never made the distinction before. They've always said one is the same, but they're very, very different. The whole principle about lending money is this. If you have a pool of money, i.e. you have some money in your bank account, you can take that out of your bank account and you can lend it to somebody else. That would be lending money. Under that arrangement, what would happen is the lender and the borrower would have a contract between them, and potentially you could create a mortgage deed, which would provide the property was a security for the loan. But the important thing about it is there would be two signatures, a signature of the borrower and a signature of the lender, right? So it's a fairly simple concept. When you actually find that these mortgages have been provided by the banks, there is only one signature. And there's a very good reason for that, because there is only one party to this contract. And this is what happens. When you go to the bank and you get, for example, £100,000 as a mortgage, and you sign that document, right? What the banks do is they actually create that new money And that new money then has to be repaid. In other words, they create a debt of £100,000, and that debt has to be paid down over a period of time. Who pays that down? The borrower pays it down by virtue of giving up the use of his money in the future to pay back the mortgage. So this is the analogy. You today are borrowing from yourself in the future. So in essence, you are both the borrower and the lender. And as a consequence, that document only requires one signature, because it's not the lending of money, it is facilitating a credit facility. And I think we all know what the terminology facility means. Actually, if you look up the word facilitate or facilitator, it says that the definition is helping to commit a crime. So there we are. There's a definition of what the banks are doing. They're helping to commit a crime. And that's exactly what's going on. Because here's the point. Having written to these various banks and asked the question of them, are you claiming to have lent money, or are you claiming to have issued a credit facility? They will not answer the question. And our position is simply this. They are claiming they've lent money, which is fraudulent. So the banks are extracting interest on the basis that they're pretending to lend money when they're not. That's fraud. Under the Fraud Act of 2006, they're making false representation or extracting money without, what's the word I'm looking for? Under false pretenses, taking money under false pretenses. So we're now talking about bringing a class action or a group action in the United Kingdom against all of the banks for fraudulently taking money under false pretenses. And what we're going to do also is we're going to name as co-conspirators parliamentarians and also the judiciary, because we can prove conclusively, because of the work we've done in the courts, we can prove conclusively that the banks are not lending money. And we can also prove conclusively that the judiciary are acting as agents of the bankers by not insisting that they provide evidence of their claim that they've lent money.
I think Mike just wants to jump in there, Roger.
Yeah, Roger, what court can you take that to if, in fact, the judiciary are named as an accused?
Yeah, excellent question, and I think this was covered. I had met up with Carl Lenz, who was on your show several weeks ago. We had a conversation about Queen's Bench. Okay, a very interesting conversation. Our position is that the only court in the land that can make a decision on this is the grand jury. Now, the purpose of the grand jury is to answer a claim that something is going wrong. So we would put to the grand jury the question, are the banks acting unlawfully, and are the politicians and the judiciary conspiring? I have no doubt in my mind that any jury that was asked that question would come to the conclusion, yes, we the people are being defrauded by our own government, the bankers and the judiciary, because we've done the work and we've got the evidence. So the question is, do you then take it to the Queen's Bench? And the Queen's Bench is a common law court, and it would be subject to a jury. Absolutely, there is no question whatsoever that it would be a jury trial. I would be fearful of the fact that the jury would be tampered, because these people leave no stone unturned. So there's an element of risk there. So I think that we would have to be involved in a selection process to ensure that the jury itself wasn't being nobbled. But this is what concerns me about the court process. What Carl alluded to, well, I'm not saying he alluded to, he's actually been in the court, he's done the work himself. He has claimed that what they use is effectively a secret language or a coded language, the words of which mean something entirely different to what we think they are. Yeah. Now, I'm sorry, but my interpretation is this, that if they use a language which is not what we think it is, then we are being scammed by the judiciary, because we are being denied access to true justice, because they are deliberately manipulating the arrangements in the court so they know what's going on, and they are deliberately keeping from us the secret of this coded language. Okay, so that's my position on there. So can we demonstrate, can we prove that the court system is corrupt? Absolutely, yes, we can. Can we prove that the parliamentarians are conspirators? Yes, we can. And how can we prove that? Because we have this example where one of our members, Justin Walker, has actually written to the committee dealing with the Banking Reform Act, and he said, what about the Bradbury? And what did they come back and say? We're too busy for that. You know, we're too busy with the whitewash. That's what's happened. And the thing is, whitewashers do take a long time, don't they? Because you've got to tie all the ends together. Because when you tell lies, you've got to make sure the fudge is complete. So that's why this committee meeting has taken so long. When you tell the truth, it doesn't take that long because you actually are beholden to the facts in the matter. So we've got all of this evidence. We've got all of the proof. We've done the groundwork. We've got to the conclusions. And we're now seeing on the ground where people are losing their homes because people will lie, people will actually use fraudulent systems to, if you like, to claim people's property. And we ourselves now have no defence whatsoever because the police themselves provably are acting as agents of the court. Now, we've got some footage. I don't know whether you guys have got access to that footage as yet, but in front of the camera, I said to the policeman said he was there to assist the bailiffs. And I said, that's not your job. Your job is to keep the peace. Your job is to uphold the law. Your job is to know the law, and that includes the Constitution. The Constitution says no man should be deprived of his property without judgment of his peers. And the policeman didn't say a lot because I'm sure his brain was going over this and he was saying this makes a lot of sense. I served on the police officer at the time, this document here. I don't know if you can just see that. It's a notice and it highlights the key points. Have you got a minute? Can I just read the beginning paragraph to outline?
Roger,
yeah.
I think what we should do is continue to the top of the hour, so that gives us another whatever it is, 15 minutes, and then we will reprogram a special edition with yourself, and we'll look into all of these matters in more detail, and hopefully we'll be able to get some video footage up as well. So this is a fantastic and straight in the deep end update on what's been going on. So let's just continue to until 2 o'clock, but we will produce another slot because I know a lot of people are going to be interested in this.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the important thing that viewers should know is that we've not rushed into this. We've been very methodical. We've gone about this in a very professional way. We've done our groundwork. We've done our homework. We know what we're doing. And we've actually gone into the courts and we've said to the courts, this is not about you giving a judgment. This is about us giving you, the courts, the opportunity to redeem yourselves, right? Because we don't accept your authority anymore because you've proven to us that you are corrupt people. But nevertheless, we have an obligation to give the courts the opportunity to redeem themselves, and they don't. And in the most recent case, and this is the matter I'm dealing with now, with the judge, Judge Lindsay Davies, a circuit judge, we made the point. She first of all said to me, are you here as a Mackenzie's friend? I said, no, I'm not. I'm here as a common law advocate. She said, you have to apply to be a Mackenzie's friend. I said, no, I don't. I'm here because this gentleman wants me to represent his interests, and that's what I'm going to be. And at that point, she backed down. So when they tell us you have no right of audience, I say, yes, I do. We're claiming common law jurisdiction, and you do not have any authority over me. And this is the point. Another question that we pose to these judges, do you claim any authority over me without my consent? A question that they will never answer, and for good reason, because the answer is they do not. So when you have that initial sort of debate with them, you show your authority. There is a very different position they take with you. They stop trying to tell you what to do. But nevertheless, ultimately, the decision they make is always based not on the rule of law. It's based on the fact that they are agents of the banks. And I've just briefly mentioned what happened in the Irish courts when we were in Northern Ireland. We phoned the police and we told the police that we were going to challenge the jurisdiction of the court and that it was going to be very robust. We asked them to attend to protect our interests, and the 3 police officers listened to what I had to say. I said, we're going to be lawful, we are going to be peaceful, and we are here to challenge the jurisdiction of the court because we have a democratic right to do so. And they listened to this and they took it on board, and we all went into the court. And we then told the judge that we had to decide whether we were prepared to let him be the judge. And he said, I am the judge. And we said, no, you're not. You're not the judge until we consent to you being the judge. This was very amusing for the police. And eventually there was a bit of a to-ing and froing. And the judge turned around and said to me, well, I want to know who you are. I want to know what your name is. At which point I said, well, that depends what name you want. Do you want the legal person name? Because these courts are about the legal person. It's not about the man. I said, do you want the legal person name or do you want the name of the man? And the judge wouldn't answer the question. That should tell everybody the significance about the legal person. So I repeated, I said, you can call me Roger. That's my name. That's the name my parents gave me. But if you want the legal person, you have to ask for it. And he wouldn't deal with it. And I then continued to press home the point that until such time he answered key questions, whether he accepted it as a common law court, he was not going to be the judge. And it was the people from downstairs came up to watch all of this. And then at the point where I said that the court was not a court, there was no emblem of Her Majesty there, I turned around to the police and said, what we are witnessing here is this gentleman is acting in treason of the Crown. Please take notes. And the police took out their notebooks and started to write down details. And the judge said, no, please don't take notes. So that was the episode there. So again, the key point is that we have challenged the judiciary. This gentleman threatened me with contempt of court. And I said, right, I'm out of here because you just threatened me. He said, I didn't. I said, you have just threatened me with contempt of court. I said, if asking question is contempt of court, there's no fairness in that, I'm out of here. They adjourned, the judge came back, there was no more mention of contempt of court. Now that court hearing was with Guy Taylor, and Guy Taylor and I have done a number of court cases together, and what we're finding is that when we challenge their so-called authority, and when we ask them whether they claim any authority, they very quickly back down. And again, coming back to the most recent case, which was in the Luton County Court, Judge Lindsay Davies, who I'm now claiming is a corrupt judge, and I'm happy to say it. If she has any issues with that, she can sue me, as many of these other judges are. They're simply corrupt people because they're not involved in upholding the law. They're simply rubber stamping banking rules and regulations because they're agents of the banks.
Roger, can I just jump in a sec? It's all very well you challenging this, and I don't know if the people that you are supporting and working with have children, but a lot of people could be a bit worried. They've got young kids maybe, and we're hearing what's going on in this country at the moment about kids being taken off. Just for people who are homeschooling, thinking a little bit differently. What are people to do? They may want to challenge, but they've also got to think of their children, and that's their most precious possession. I mean, what are they supposed people with young families who are having these struggles and possibly having their houses taken off them? There is a strong possibility if they use these methods, Roger, and start challenging the judges, that they could well be flagged up to social services like a problem family and not thinking down the right line as what they should, and they could potentially have their children taken away. What can you advise for people who are in that situation but do have young children to think of as well? Okay,
it's absolutely clear to me that the only issue that we can deal with these courts is the money banking scenario, and I'll explain what I mean by that shortly. To take on the judges when your children are involved is I believe, is just not the thing to do. No. You've got to play their game for the time being, because once you start having a go at the judiciary, there there is that threat, because they don't obey the law, they will just come back. It's a dictatorship. It's a judicial dictatorship from that point of view. I could not recommend I could not recommend that anybody go into the court and start picking a fight with the judge when their children are involved. There is another way to do this, and there's a way to do it in which we can all protect our own interests, but we have to work together, and that's the banking thing. This is where the class action comes in, and this is a very, very important point. This is the subject matter at which, or for which the people will get behind. Because our claim is that the banks have defrauded us. And the fraud is that interest on money that they didn't lend was not valid, and therefore it's unlawful, and therefore we are going to claim back from the banks every penny in interest they've taken from us for every mortgage that's ever been. Now, we're talking trillions, we're not talking billions. The PPI scandal, that cost the banks 20 billion. These people are crooks, right? This is a criminal fraternity. They are stealing from us, and they're being aided and abetted by the judiciary and the parliamentarians, right? Now, some of these parliamentarians will say to us, oh, I don't really understand it. I don't understand it. That's a nonsense. It's willful ignorance. They know exactly what's going on. I make the claim, I'm pretty sure that most of these members of parliament have got offshore bank accounts. They're being rewarded. You notice how many members of parliament work for the banks when they actually leave office? Almost all of them. It's either they work for a bank or a large corporation. So I regard that as being paid off. They're not paid off whilst they're in the position. They're paid off when they leave office, and that's where they're being bribed. That's where the corruption is. And we've got to take the bankers on. We've got to bring this class action against the banks. And here's what will happen: we will ask people to sign up to this class action, and we will ask them to pay a small amount of money to support our claim. We will put together a package that will indicate how much they can claim back from the banks, and I would suggest the average claim is going to be in excess of £50,000. And at the back of people's minds will be this: yes, PPI was a fraud against the customers. So was the LIBOR scandal. So was this rates exchange scandal. The whole derivatives is a complete scam. The value of the derivatives markets worldwide is now $700 billion. What's the size of the world GDP? $70 trillion. It's a nonsense. It's a big, big scam. So we're going to put our claim before a court, and we've discussed what court, but it'll be a court in which we decide what the jury will be. And we're going to claim that the banks pay up all of the interest that we've ever paid them because they have not had the right to charge that interest. It's fraud. Now, how many people do you think are going to get behind us on that one? Because all they've got to do is sign the dotted line. We will do a power of attorney, and we will take the banks to a common law court in which we can guarantee we'll get justice. What do you think is going to happen? I think every politician is going to be running around like a chicken with its head cut off, because we're pointing the finger at them as well. They are co-conspirators to a crime. It's a criminal fraternity that's controlling our money supply. And what's happening when the Committee for Banking Reform gets the opportunity to look at it? It's waffle and it's nonsense. So that's what we're dealing with now.
Roger, thank you very much for that. I can tell you that on the comments coming up on screen, which we can see, a lot of people are making very, very positive comments. They're asking for more about you. I was a bit remiss when you first came on because I didn't say chairman of the British Constitution Group, but of course it was the British Constitution Group that started to really dig into matters in this country and how our constitution, society, history was all being pulled apart. Really, it seems to me that the work that's been done very, very quietly and diligently over the last 18 months by you and a very good group of people around you is starting to have dividends. And I think if we end on a positive note, it seems to me that we've now got something tangible that the people of this country can get behind in order to get the lid off the sheer corruption between Westminster the judiciary and the banks, which is the core of this massive attack on our society and our well-being. So there's some people there saying, well, if you're saying the courts are corrupt, how can we still deal with them? Would you agree that although you've been very hard there on the judiciary and indeed partly on the police, would you agree that there are signs now that we've got members of the judiciary and indeed members of the police force who are starting to wake up to the fact that they themselves have been conned by this bent system, and these people are now starting to show some signs of standing up and being counted?
Well, okay, there's a couple of things you mentioned there, and I can sort of bring a number of key points together. The work we have done, we have been very quiet. We've been, labouring away in the background because we thought it was important to do so. We're now going to sort of start making a lot more noise about the British Constitution, and your listeners or viewers. If you're not a member of the BCG, the British Constitution Group, we urge you to do so, because that's that basically keeps me on the road. The website is on your website, which is bcgroup.org.uk. We ask for a very small donation of about £1 a month, or as much as you can afford. There's also, we've worked very closely with Dave Eden, who is of the community press officers. He's put together a group. We did this as a group effort some time ago, and he's on the ground getting people to report all of this. And again, if people could assist with that organisation as well. Of course, there's UK Economy doing a superb job out there getting the message out to people. And then the court work we're doing. We're now asking people, if you've got a potential repossession of your home, get in touch, join the BCG, get in touch with us, because we can give you a tactic to use against these people. We're going for the people in the courts. We're going for the people in the courts who claim. Let me just show you this very, very quickly, what's going on here. I know you're on the air, but we have got, that is the authority that is being used to repossess people's homes. It is a stamp. That's all it is. And I can show you another document here, which, if I can find it, that is, which is another stamp. Murphy's Law, it's not here. Never mind. The point is that anybody can produce a stamp. We've produced our own court stamp. It's the Common Law Courts of England, and all of our documents are actually signed. These documents are not signed by any judge, and the reason is because they're all fraudulent. But in our case, what we're suggesting to people is that we would sign our documents. It's signed by Judge Baloney, because effectively that gives the comparison to what their judges are. They're all baloney. So the scenario that we're looking at now is people have got potentially a repossession is come to us. Anybody who's had a mortgage, has ever had or has a mortgage, you're being defrauded. Therefore, you need to join us, and you need to make your voice heard through us. And we're going to get on this year and explain to people how it is that we could take out this prosecution against the whole banking fraternity to get the money that has been stolen from us back for the people.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Roger. I'll be giving you a shout later.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Roger Hayes there with an update. There's a lot more to come. It's fantastic, the amount of work that's, as Roger says, has been going on quietly. Now, we've run on. I just want to end on this note, because we've been talking about the corruption around the banks, and we better bring in the Chancellor. Well, here he is. Just look at those eyes. You'd trust this man with your pet hamster. What's the Mirror got to say? Well, George Osborne warns that Britain could quit the EU unless there is reform. This is complete and utter nonsense, of course. It's followed up in the Guardian. He's laying down, well, he might be lying down, but he's not putting down an ultimatum, reform the EU or Britain quits. Well, let's look behind the scenes as we do, because certainly in the Guardian article, they're mentioning this organisation, Open Europe, and of course, little Osborne has been giving a speech to Open Europe. if we get into this organisation, here's the vision. They are an independent think tank. They just happen to have offices in London and Brussels, and they've been set up by leading UK business people, and they want open, honest debate, and so it goes on. Well, I think Julia Middleton from the political charity Common Purpose should have a look at this organisation, because it's absolutely full of white swanky men, as she would say. Please go and have a look at this site yourself, and you will see the huge number of links and interests that these gentlemen have. I'm going to say there are a few token ladies clearly put in to give some semblance that this isn't an old boys club. But you will find major international bankers, and they are clearly pulling the Chancellor's strings. Osborne is saying what the EU will and will not do, utter nonsense. And we better end with this one. Scorn as Miliband woos the middle class. Well, we said this was an outrageous thing yesterday. Let's remember what the Sun said about this man. We can laugh, but this is the reality. He's not unelectable. He's not unelectable as a cartoon buffoon, but as the smiling face of Saul Alinsky and the Marxist policy. So don't be fooled by this man. He's anything but stupid. He's a very, very dangerous man, in our opinion. And of course, at the end of the day, who is pulling the strings of these people? It's the very bankers that Roger Hayes has been talking about.
Right, I just need to say, V for Vendetta in the chat room, I have been looking at what you're saying, and I'm going to announce now for people who are watching later on YouTube that V has been doing some research, and apparently if you've been claiming housing benefit from before 1996, without any 4 weeks break, you are not subject to the bedroom tax or a reduction in your housing benefit. And this is coming from V, so we will have a look into that further and bring you, maybe not tomorrow because it's the UK Column Monthly meet tonight, but certainly within the next week I'll be looking into it, and we will bring you more with regards to the bedroom tax. So thanks very much for that, V, and I will definitely look into it.
Okay, well, we'll leave you there. That's the state of the nation. But the good news is in 2014, there's all sorts of tremendous stuff where I think people are going to say, we've had enough of this and it's time to do something about it. Thanks for joining us. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow or tonight at the George.
At the George.
Cheers.
Okay, bye-bye.